Hi, thank you for joining me today on my channel. I appreciate you stopping by. Today I'm going to show you what do you really need when you go camping. Because I think we get caught up in the whole commercialism aspect of things. You gotta have the biggest and best gear. You have to have the most gear. When you get caught up in that though, then you can kind of lose focus about what you really need and getting to learn your tools so that you can use them to their optimal ability or optimal level. You don't need a lot of the stuff that you see on the table, especially just getting started out. Now here's something about this gear. My point of today's video is that we do get caught up in the whole commercialism idea of it, just like many of us get caught up in the commercialism idea of Memorial Day as a whole. If we do that, we lose track, we lose focus of the core, or the whole point or purpose of it. At least that's my personal opinion. I have nothing against having barbecues and stuff. In fact, my family has a barbecue every year. So that's not my point. I'm not trying to condemn anybody for that. But it's easy for us to want things, build up and surround ourselves with a bunch of gear when you don't actually need all that gear to go out and have fun. And on Memorial Day weekend, it might be really cool for you and your family to go out, even if it's in your backyard. And don't be intimidated by camping or spending a night outdoors thinking, oh, I don't have a tent, or I don't have a sleeping bag, or I don't have things like that, because you don't need it. You really, honestly don't need it. So I'm going to show you not all this stuff in this video. I'm going to break a lot of this stuff down. But we can learn lessons from the early scouts, because a lot of those kids and their families, they didn't have money to go out and buy the latest and greatest and best equipment. Our economy was very different, and how people spend is very different today than what it was in the 1910s, 1920s, and then during the Great Depression. So I'm going to take a page from that book, and I'm going to show you what you really need or should have to spend a couple nights camping, even if it's in your own backyard. All right, let's dive into it. There are two things that the scouts had, and generally they carried on them. They didn't actually carry in a backpack. You had a couple options. We have our canteen. They had water bottles, not in the same sense that we have today, but they did have different types of water bottles or liquid containers for you to take water. But having a canteen is extremely important. Some scouts chose to buy this type of mess kit. So this type of mess kit has a strap so you could wear it around and cross. You didn't have to pack it in your small backpack. Now I bring that up because as we start looking at the small type of backpack that the early scouts had, it makes sense why they might choose to go this way, so that they could save the premium space in their backpack for clothing and other items. And if you're interested in any of these different artifacts, at the end of this video, I'll go ahead and put the playlist from last summer, because all of these different artifacts was actually discussed last year. This year I just want to go a little bit more in depth in how they were used. Now, if we take a look at this backpack right here, there's a lot of stuff that's in it that actually doesn't need to be in this pack, because there's a lot of stuff that's still on my table that doesn't fit in here, and that's a problem. So how are we going to address that? We're going to take a look at even what American Civil War soldiers and our Revolutionary War soldiers, they did when they had to pack a lot of gear. They used something called the bedroll. When I was more heavily involved in Civil War reenacting and my group was much larger, I had the opportunity to teach a lot of new people about Civil War reenacting, because I had a lot of years under my belt and a lot of experience, and I've read a lot of accounts. So the way I always explained it to people who are new to Civil War reenacting, or even to this type of camping style, You got to think of your bedroll as your bedroom, and this bag, since it's so small, primarily as your kitchen. So this is your bedroom, this is your kitchen. And when you start thinking of it like that, you can easily start putting things where they can go to make your job a lot easier for organization and even setting stuff up. For example, I have my rubber blanket on the first layer. Now, when I take that off, it's going to be the weather barrier between the ground and myself. So if it gets wet from dew or if it rains, then me laying on top of it or any of the equipment that's on top of it isn't going to get damaged, or I'm not going to get wet. And that means I'm also not going to get sick. So having this on top protects everything because it's waterproof, but it's also going to be the first thing I lay down when I set up my camping spot. The next thing that I put inside my rubber blanket is my tent, or maybe you have another tarp or something like that. In warm weather, you don't need a whole lot. Now this 1910 tent, or two shelter halves, that I'll show you later on, it's got a really neat feature where it kind of bundles up together nicely. These 1910 shelter hats, this design was specifically designed to be used in a bedroll fashion, which is why it has the straps that you see here. Now, if you do expect rain, I would honestly suggest, if you're using this, to actually put it on the outside and then put the rubber blanket on the inside. Because if you're trying to set up camp in the downpour, you don't want to be fiddling around with this part of your bedroll. Instead, you want to set up your tent first, keep everything else inside of it dry with your rubber blanket, and then after you got your tent up, you can move everything in and lay out your rubber blanket to make sure that you have that weather barrier between you and the ground. As you're putting things together, try to think about quick deployment. Everything's going to be layered. The first thing that you want off, the second thing that you want off, and the third thing that you want off. But also, what is going to be easiest to remove it? Now, if I keep my bedroll, my tent, just like this here, then I can quickly pull it out and set up the tent. I don't have to worry about unrolling my blanket completely and fiddling around with all of its stuff. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lay my blanket out, and it's going to take about half of this other space. Okay, full disclosure, I made a mistake when I explained this. Initially, I put my tent on this side, closest to me, when in reality, I should have put it farthest away, because when I roll up, due to the camera, I'm actually going to roll up towards you. So make sure that your tent, if you're doing it like me, is on the opposite side of where you're going to roll up. Now, this is my Civil War reproduction blanket. Now, in the 1910s to the 1930s, and even today, people still use military surplus. And you can get, if you want a wool blanket, cheap military surplus wool blankets, not the Civil War, but you can use military surplus if you want that wool functionality. But you don't need wool. During the summer months, you can take a couple fleece blankets that you probably have in your closet, grandma's old comforter or something like that along with you. You'd be perfectly fine. Okay, so this area here is going to be our pocket. Now we want to spread things out here, but we also want to make sure that they're organized in a way that when we bend it, then the items are going to be really split on both sides. So I'll show you how I organize it personally. Now before we start breaking this stuff out, this is honestly a good point for me to kind of stop and just take a moment to say, if you are not familiar with my website, www.honorableoutfitters.com, it's a website that I have all my source material on. So there's tons of free books on there. And a lot of this information that you see here not only comes from the catalogs that I've read. I don't have a lot of catalogs on my website, but I do have primary sources based off of books. And there's two books in particular that were written for the purpose of scouts in the early 1900s. And they were both written by a guy named Edward Cave. So if you're interested in why I'm doing this or how I'm doing this, not only is my own experience from Civil War reenacting and primitive camping and things like that, but also from those type of resources. So you should check that website out. They're free online books, and if you're really interested, you can even buy them. Anything that you purchase on that website, it helps out my channel, because it's through affiliate links, I even have reproductions on there. So if you like some of the reproduction stuff here, then go on there and you can purchase it, and it helps out our channel. But yeah, free resources. You should totally check it out. And if you've liked this so far, if you're interested so far and you like where this is going, do me a favor and go ahead and click like. That way other people find it and it helps them out as well. I really appreciate it, and so will they. So I do have my pack here. Now, this is the stuff that I could not fit in my bag, just to show you, we got to come up with another alternative. So if I were to open this up, in this type of haversack, or the Boy Scout haversack. Now this is a reproduction, again, you can get on my website, but I do have 2 original Boy Scout haversacks that were made just like this. And again, Edward Cave even talks about it in his book, which excited me when I read that. But I have a pocket up here. This is where I keep my mess equipment. And I have my pocket down here, and this is where I want to keep a lot of my food. As a kid or even as an adult, you're going to be eating a lot, you're going to be burning a lot of calories. So this is where we're going to keep our food. So I'm going to pull out some things here. Now what my viewer, who suggested that I do this video last year, she wanted to know how was it all packed. Well, for this type of pack, this is how they do it. So you would have your extra pair of pants. You'd also have an extra pair of underwear. Now, these are original Scout breeches. You would have your extra shirt, and it's suggested that you use a long sleeve shirt, especially if you're going to be out in the brush. This is my original 1930s Scout shirt. Now these are kid size. These are not adult size, but you get it. It's the same principle. Anything else that we want to put in there? No, but I think we're good right there. And I'll explain more of the stuff that's going in this bag. But first, let's worry about our bedroll. Already, that's a lot more manageable. Now, Scouts had a lot of pockets. On this shirt, you have your 2 front pockets, and you would use them to carry things. In one, you might have a compass, and the other, you might have a whistle, or you might have your mirror, things like that. And you also have your pants pockets that you would keep things that you really wanted to get to closely. And you also had your belt. Now, I did do a video in the fall about the Scout belt, so you should check that out. And later on, through this series in the summer, we'll talk more in depth about that. Okay, so these are the things that we want to put in our bedroll. Now, we have an empty pillowcase here. You might wonder, why do you want an empty pillowcase? Well, in truth, you should also probably have a longer empty cotton bag. And this is something that even Horace Kephart suggested, and a couple other early campcraft writers. You carry an empty bag with you. That way you can stuff it with browse, like leaves or things like that, to make a comfortable bed. The whole point is not to sleep on the hard ground and rough it. You find ways of making yourself comfortable. And this empty pillowcase doesn't weigh anything. So you would have maybe a trash bag in place of an empty pillowcase. Now, I like having an empty pillowcase specifically for my head, but you do you. But in a modern equivalent, I think maybe using like a trash bag or even a small grocery bag that you could use to fill with browse and use that as a pillow. It doesn't weigh anything if you're counting ounces. Absolutely nothing. And we're thinking about doing this on the cheap, right? You probably have, at least here in the Midwest, you probably have grocery bags underneath your sink or hanging up in one of those bag socks. So use it. You already got it. We have our shirt, we have our pants, we have 2 pairs of socks. Now, I generally keep 1 extra pair of socks in my backpack, because there's nothing worse than having wet or cold feet. If you get rid of your feet, if you mess those up too bad, then that's going to cut your trip short. So always worry about your feet. And we have our shirt. Now this bundle, and this is just a fancy toiletry kit, but again, you can use a Ziploc bag or another plastic bag to put your toiletries in. For my scouts, when they're starting out, in fact, even my own kids, I always put their toiletries in a Ziploc bag. So include your toothbrush, include your soap, maybe your shampoo, a towel or washcloth, small one, things like that, and floss. The basic things that you'll need to take care of yourself when you're outdoors. So we have that bundle. Now we're going to balance it out. So we're trying to balance with thickness here. So we have those. And you're going to play around with this a little bit to figure out what works best for you. All right, so we have it split. Now, take your backpack and put it smack dab in the middle, and then move things fairly close to it. Just like so. Okay, because you want this area to be your thinnest, you want this to be your bulkiest part, and because all of this is actually going to go underneath the flap of this bag here. So we have that. Now we're going to fold in the ends and do this in steps. We're going to fold our ends of our blanket first. Just like so. Okay. And then we're going to fold our ends of our tent. But see how that is also creating an open space? It's perfect. And we want to fold our ends of our rubber part. Okay, now what we can do is I always tuck this in just that way I have everything closed off. I don't like leaving anything open when I start. Okay, now we're just going to roll it towards you or opposite of your direction. Once you get to this point, take this and fold it inside. Again, we want to try to keep a waterproof barrier out of all of our stuff. Okay, now we just need some rope. We're going to tie both ends, and we're also going to tie the middle sections. That way it helps us create those pockets. Okay, so you're going to tie the center first, and what I always do is you can tie it however you want. There's no right or wrong way, but I like to tie a marlin spike on one end of my rope because it's really easy to undo in case I ever want to reuse the string, because we are going to ratchet this down quite a bit. So how you do that is you take your rope, you make a flip, and then you go over the piece of rope that you want to bring through, and you pull. So the marlin spike is so useful. It's a very easy knot. And then if you ever want it undone, all you have to do is just pull it undone. It's had a little bit long of a tail. I don't want it. So pull, and you got a loop. Now as you ratchet this down, the marlin spike, it will shrink on you, like so. So it bites down onto your other line quite a bit, which I think is a benefit. And once you cut these pieces of rope once, keep it with your kit. That way you don't have to do it over and over and over again. Give yourself a little bit of a tail to work with. You have my eye, stick it through the eye of the marlin spike. And this little tail here is going to give me something to tie this other end to. Really crank it down. If your tail is too short, like what I cut mine here, what you do is you tie a 1/2 inch. So to do that, stick your one end and create a loop. Don't put it all the way through. And then bring that loop back down. And now you have another loop that you can pull to release it. And I always take that little tail and lock it into place like that. And that locks it in. So it's really easy to undo. See if I can get this one right on this side. Okay, when it comes to your kitchen, what you take for food and how you prepare it, or all the different things that you might personally need, it's a personal choice. But I will tell you this, you can go as simple as you want. You can go instant meals, cup of noodles, things like that. I would certainly suggest you get like biscuits, dried biscuits, some type of bread product that'll stick with you, and protein, because protein is going to stick with you longer than anything. A good option are beans. I love beans, but also taking bacon, something that you can cook beforehand, but will keep for a longer period of time, especially without any type of refrigeration. You can go to Walmart, you can go to Meijer or Kroger or wherever your grocery store is, and you can actually get packets of meat that doesn't have so much water like canned meats, like canned chicken or even tuna. So think along those lines. That way you don't have to worry about so much the weight, but also the food preparation. You spend more time doing what you want to do. If you like cooking, then you'll definitely want to take along some things that you need to prepare your food. Hence the mess kits, like the camp-style mess kits. But you don't need that. You really don't. You can even prepare food before you go. That way, all you have to do is just heat it up if need be, and it's simple. So you don't have to overcomplicate this. You really, really don't. The whole point is just get out there and have some fun. What I'm going to show you are some historical options that scouts used that were cheap, economical, and filling. That's the main goal. Cheap, economical, and filling. So a lot of people start out just taking a cup from their home and a plate. You can even use like your an old tin pie plate. It's light, or an aluminum pie plate. It's light and it'll work just fine. So that's what I have here. Again, extra socks. I always keep a little testament. I suggest you also take like some paper and a pencil along. What I have here and why I don't have anything in this is because this was the Ziploc bag of its day. It's basically a painted cloth. They also had oiled silk that they would use to put things in to keep them waterproof, or if they had greasy foods. That way the grease would have more difficulty seeping through this and getting all over their other stuff. So when we open this up, and we open up my pouch here, this is where I keep all my cooking equipment. These are my utensils. So I have my fork, my knife, my spoon, and I also have various spices in my Treenware spice bottles. You know, if it's wooden, it's not going to break. I have my mess kit. Now we're actually going to talk about this mess kit. I'm going to break it out and show you this really cool 100-year-old plus mess kit next week. So you should definitely subscribe and hit the notification button, because this is a pretty neat kit. And it's not super rare, but it's scarce. Let's just put it that way. And it has really neat history. On the sides here, in my full pockets, I keep candles. Now, we have lightweight flashlights today. In the 1910s, they also still had flashlights, but they're a little bit more expensive than just taking candles. And this makes a great fire starter. So I keep some candles there in the sides. Now we're getting into what's called my larder, or what I take to eat. I have my stone bridge lantern. Now if you want a reproduction of this, you should check out my website. It's on there. It's not tin, it's a reproduction brass one, but it's basically the same. And I have a little pocket in here. Now a little pocket is where I keep my small stuff that I don't want to keep in my pockets on my person. And there we go. That is my bag. That is my kitchen, if you will. So let's start with the little pocket. I have my sewing kit. I have my blanket pins. That way, if I need to make a repair, also, in case I want to use that blanket and make it into a sleeping bag. I have a nub of a candle. That way I can use that as a fire starter. I have a harmonica for entertainment. I have my fire kit, my fire bundle. And in this I have matches, I have flint and steel. I even have my trench lighter, and I have some tinder in there. Now again, you don't need a professional fire kit. Take a lighter with you, take some matches and put it in a Ziploc bag, and find some dry stuff, even sawdust if you got that lying around, and you got yourself a fire kit. Okay? Don't overcomplicate it. Now for my larder, my food, where to begin? I guess we'll start with root vegetables. Root vegetables stay a while. Now these are potatoes. In the 1900s, people had root cellars, and in those root cellars they would have vegetables from the previous growing season, and they would keep for a long period of time. So the nice thing about having root vegetables is you can't break them. They're very durable, so it's hard to bruise them to a state where they're completely unedible, and you can do a lot with them. There's a lot of calories to this. So I could eat this raw if I really wanted to, put a little bit of salt on it. Used to do it all the time as a kid. I could fry it up, I could mash it up and make it into mashed potatoes. There's so much you can do with potatoes. In fact, you can even use this as a thickener for soups and stews. So potatoes are really good to have. In my mess kit. Now here's something that you want to get used to doing when you pack your stuff. Use every inch of space that you can. So inside my mess kit here, I actually have carrots. Now, at this point in the season, these carrots would probably be pretty soft, a little spongy, but they'd still be perfectly edible. Now spring's here, so here soon we'll have some really good vegetables all over again. So I have carrots, I have potatoes, I have flour. Now this is a pre-mixed flour mixture. That way I can make fresh bread, or maybe I could make a bannock, or even if I wanted to, I could make something called like a flapjack. It's a precursor to pancakes. Today we call them pancakes. Pancakes and flapjacks are pretty similar. So that's what this is for. I have a little container of sugar. Now, I like sugar in my coffee. I might want to add sugar to my biscuits or something else. Just a little bit of sweetener can go a long way to make your meal more palatable. Inside this bag, I have rice. Now, I actually opened this up to show you. So I have my rice. Inside the rice, I have eggs. Now, these are hard-boiled eggs. I would not suggest taking uncooked eggs on a long camp out, where things are going to be jostled about and could get kind of messy. But hard-boiled eggs are really nice because they're already cooked, they're already prepared. If you want to mix it with other things, you can. It would be really delicious. And I put them in the rice because the rice acts as a cushion to protect them. Now, a lot of your earlier campcraft writers also suggested taking oats, but the problem with oats is they don't stick with you. They don't fill you up as much and stay with you as much as things like rice. So I could take my rice and I could boil it up, make it good and soft, add a little bit of sugar, and now I have a rice pudding. Or I could even go a little bit further. I can take my sugar, my rice, a little bit of flour, and crushed up egg, and now I can make myself like a rice cake. So there's a lot of things here. It's very basic, but also quite usable. And I have biscuits here, pre-made biscuits. Now the reason why I have pre-made biscuits is because if I'm on a hike to where I'm going camping, then having something that I can eat on, or right as soon as I get to the campsite, I'm just too tired to eat, I have something edible that I can eat. Now inside here, I have my meat. Now this is about a pound of salt pork. Salt pork was readily available in the early 1900s. This is made for me, and it's honestly, I just pulled it out of the freezer today, and it's about 3 years old. So we're going to test it out and see how well it's kept all this time. But salt pork will stay edible for an extremely long time. And your Civil War soldiers would keep their salt pork in their bags like this. That way the greasiness, because even this cloth, it's starting to soak through. So you would have some type of meat that you could take along with you. You could take jerky. Now jerky and meat sticks and things like that, that's really good, but it's also kind of expensive. You can make your own, but it's still not super cheap. So having something like this, or maybe a slab of bacon that'll last a little bit longer, is a really good option for you to take camping. Okay, so now that we have all this, you can see that this is now, like I said, basically my kitchen. Now my bedroll is my bedroom. I do have an extra pair of socks that I keep in my bag because if I need to change my socks halfway through, it's a lot easier to get into my bag than to get in my bedroll. So things that you have in your bag here are things that you want to get to rather quickly, beyond what you already have in your pockets or on your belt. Hence the fire kit. I'll have a little container of matches with me in my pocket, but having a fire kit that's going to stay dry, that's safe in my bag, you know, that's what it's all about. Okay, now let's put this all back in the bag and let's show you how to put it all together. And now you're going to see why it's really important that our bedroll is tightly rolled and we have our soft middle section here, because this is going to go over it and we're going to latch it down. See how it does. Okay, looking pretty good. Now we're going to bend this down around like so, and we're going to tie our bedroll around our pack. Now for this, what I would suggest is actually tying 2 half hitches or a taut line on one end. That's going to give you your slip knot, but it's also going to be easy to slip off when you need to. Now we're going to do like a crisscross pattern around it, like a figure 8. Now you have yourself your scout pack. Now this is a lot of weight for a kid, in truth. As you can see, my bottom's coming undone. I didn't do a very good job of tucking that in and tying that in. But that's how you would put the pack together. That's how you put the pack together. And there's a lot of weight here. This is weighing about 25 to 30 pounds with this historic gear. Now, how could I cut down on weight? Well, good news is the more that I eat, the less weight it's going to be. Also, I really don't need that complete tent. If I had just the shelter half instead of one whole tent, that would cut down on weight. I could also take a lighter blanket, and instead of taking, a full 5-pound wool blanket, I could take a 2-pound blanket, and that would make this feel a whole lot lighter, and it would be a lot easier on my back and a lot easier to roll up. We can cut ounces also by the type of gear that we carry. Now our modern equivalent of gear is a lot lighter, and like the flashlights. Instead of taking that lantern, which the lantern weighs about a pound and a half, we can take a very small headlamp. The cook kit that I have in here, it weighs a little bit more than what the other Boy Scout mess kit is. Boy Scout mess kit is made out of aluminum. This cook kit that I have in here now is made of tin steel. But the whole point of this exercise that I want you to get is that you don't have to have the most expensive and best things. You can get away with using just common things around your house and finding some book bag or maybe a duffel bag or something else that you have, put them in there and you're good to go. You really don't need the tent. You can go to the dollar store and you can get yourself a nice cheap plastic sheet. You can go to Walmart and get a really large cheap plastic tarp, and you can use that for your shelter and use that for your ground layer. You don't need a sleeping bag. You can just take a blanket from home. You can take your plastic water bottle or metal water bottle that was probably given to you as a freebie by a banker someplace. You can look in your pantry and get some basic foods that you probably already have. You don't need super expensive backpacking meals to get you outdoors. So there's ways around all these different things to get you outside and enjoy the experience by yourself, with friends, or with family. Okay, I hope you guys like this video. I hope you learned something about it. I hope you are inspired a little bit, either in learning about more retro camping or just going out with just on the cheap, if you will, because it's easy to do and it gets you outside. You don't need a lot of expensive equipment. It's a lot of fun. It really is. Now, if you haven't done it yet, go ahead and click subscribe and the notification button, because next week I'm going to show you and teach you, I'm going to show you and tell you about the cool history of this mess kit that I briefly showed you today. It's really neat. Okay, you'll definitely like it. If you'd like to learn more about the artifacts that I did show you in this video, then here's this playlist from last season I think you'd really like. And if you're interested in what to take packing to camp, especially an extended camp that I might not have covered here today, then you'd probably be interested in this video here from Deer Camp this season. Both of them are really good videos. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy your time with your families. And on Memorial Day, this Monday, please take a moment at 3 p.m., a moment of silence or prayer or contemplation, however you want to do it, for those who sacrificed themselves for our country and for those families who have sacrificed right along with them. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Give a kiss to your loved ones, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.